Hey everybody! So today I'm back with another Galactic Center diary entry, not my own. This comes from Nyx from Wales, and they wrote something about their own experience having the Sun and Neptune conjunct the Galactic Center. This is in their 4th house. They have also given me clearance to post their chart below, so I will be linking a picture of their chart to this video so you can take a look at it if you're curious. So I'm going to read you what they wrote, and kind of, as I'm reading, mention things that stand out to me or things like that. but yeah, because I thought this was really, really beautifully written, and it deserved to be shared. So thank you so much, Nyx, for letting me read this, for allowing me to read this, your own experience. Okay, so it's called She Eats the Stars, My Black Hole Neighbor. The Galactic Center, in my experience, having my natal sun conjunct by 1 degree and my natal Neptune bang on it, is akin to a food blender. I think that's a kind of an interesting way to think about it. I mean, it makes sense. I've never thought about it like a food blender, but I get it definitely fits. Definitely fits. Then there is the great attractor at 14 degrees Sagittarius, which I have Pallas conjunct at 13 degrees Sagittarius. Then we have the Libra black hole M87, where I have my draconic Venus plus a few composite conjuncts with other people. So think of your average food blender. The way it sucks, pulverizes all of your food contents into an easier digestible liquid. Is this what happens to us when we have our archetypal planets aspecting one of these black holes? I think the effects are both positive and negative. I totally agree with this. I think they can be both a positive thing and a negative thing. For me, with my Sun and Neptune merged with this super black hole, I have always struggled with issues around identity. The plus side of this is that it has given me a great interest and resonance with Tao, Zen, non-duality, and feelings of dissolved ego and merging into oneness. The downside of this is there is no structure to form oneself in this more solid reality. This already fits the usual stereotypes of Sun conjunct Neptune, but I personally don't fit the other assumptions that go along with it. I've never had any addictions. I never experienced being drunk, so I think those negative stereotypes of Sun Neptune should be blown out the window, as they simply aren't true and don't fit everyone. I agree with you. There are so many stereotypes out there for planetary combinations in a natal chart where it's like, this is how you are, and it's like, no, you got to take everything into account. Not necessarily. So I definitely agree with that. I also want to mention that Nyx's Neptune is direct and conjunct the Galactic Center, like dead ass fucking conjunct. So, and it's my theory. This is just a working theory, but it does make sense to me that the Galactic Center, if you've got direct planets conjunct the GC, it kind of mutates them or transforms them or what have you, changes them to function more like retrograde planets would function. Now, Neptune retrograde, there are other things Neptune retrograde can represent, but Neptune retrograde, one of the things that Neptune retrograde needs to be able to do is to smash through and break through illusions, delusions, deceptions, all of these kinds of things, right? So it does kind of make sense here too in that context, that they're saying that they don't fit those kinds of stereotypes, the addictions, the things like that with the Sun conjunct Neptune, that the Sun conjunct Neptune can sometimes bring into play. That they might be more inclined not to engage like that. Or, that's kind of just my theory that, just wanted to throw that out there. But I definitely agree. There is no one size fits all anything. So assumptions like that, just in general, probably should be thrown out the window. Like the dark earth mother, the cosmic mother too wants me. Her vacuum draws me in. Like a bored queen, she yearns for my merging. Forget individual identity and asserting yourself. Asserting yourself out there, she whispers. Come to mama, she calls. Tranced and brain melting, she hijacks your thoughts into surrender and merging with hers, the great cosmic mother. If I don't fully melt into her, I know I'm in trouble. For when I ignore her and go ahead in the world as if I'm an independent, individual identity, I always find myself in trouble. Being a Sagittarius sun and a Virgo ascendant, I'm pretty mutable anyway, but I think this is amped up with the GC on board. Like a river, my sense of self flows from one thing to another, and I often wake up feeling like my mind is a clean slate, totally forgetting any projects I was into the day before. This is very disorienting to live with, especially if there is any motivation or goals or deadlines to follow, because they have all been lost in the wind. Waking in dreams are another effect she has. Waking up is almost like coming out of a coma. Coming back to the solid world every day is no fun. Well, at least the journey back and the heavy landing isn't. Dreams are my second life. My reality there is equally as real as this one. In fact, it's far fuller. I'm far more social there, always meeting up with family and deceased loved ones who, by the way, are insanely happy. And that's awesome to hear, that those that have passed on are actually insanely happy. That makes my heart happy to hear that. I keep a dream journal, which I find is a form of self-therapy and insights into my waking life. How I spew forth sentence after sentence upon rising each day, I have no idea. My conscious brain has absolutely nothing to do with it, other than functioning as a tool to hold a pen or type a word. This is what the Galactic Center Mother wants from me, though, I think. She wants my conscious self and body to be used as a vessel. She wants the ego in the passenger seat. She herself insists on steering the ship. I and she both know that as soon as I sit my arse down on that captain's seat, that I have crashed us into oblivion. I first write dreams out as a rough copy of keywords on my laptop, then later, or days, sometimes weeks later, I read them over and I write them out in my dream journal by hand. This always gives me a fresh perspective on them, going through them twice like that, and I come away feeling as if I had just received a therapy session. Also, at significant times in my life, Galactic Gaia always reaches out deeper, especially in times of great transition or death. For example, the latest time was last year when my Nan passed away. She was in a hospital slowly dying of a head injury from a fall. It was during the pandemic, so I couldn't be there with her, but this didn't stop Galactic Gaia from getting me there. I had never astral traveled intentionally. It used to happen to me randomly all the time as a child, but this is the first time it happened since then, again unintentionally. The day before, I dreamt of my great-grandmother, my Nan's mom, who I never met. She was waiting under an ocean cave for my Nan to arrive. I'm not really a big believer in an afterlife, so this felt strange. Then, the next morning, in a deep dream, I dreamt I was in a hospital room, standing in the corner with my Nan, but there were two versions of her. The version of her stood by me, and a version of her laying unconscious on the hospital bed. The version of my Nan I stood with was thanking me for coming and singing her prayers and songs the day before. We were watching as nurses were panicking around her as her body on the bed faded away. I woke up to hear my Nan had just passed away that very hour that I was having this dream. Also, every time someone I know dies, despite how close or unattached I am to them, I always have vivid dreams of them after. And for some reason, they are always hysterically happy when I see them, as if they are finally relieved of their bodies. Also, when I first started painting 14 years ago, I came out with these very abstract pieces that look exactly like black holes and supernovas, so that's why I titled them those names. That was during a massive nervous breakdown and identity crisis when transiting Pluto was in late Sagittarius conjunct my Sun, Neptune, and Galactic Center. My only way to cope was through art. If the Galactic Center has taught me anything, it is not to meddle too much or get in my own way, to let it all flow through me, even if that means surrendering myself to an annihilating degree. It's all about giving up the illusion of control of a you and of a me that is in the driver's seat. Even now, I struggle with this. I am always rebelling against the sport queen, fully wanting to own me. But that's again buying into an assumption that there is a me. My purpose here is to melt into a pool of liquid like my daily smoothie and let that liquid energy be what guides and moves the vessel that I am. Yes, it is scary to give oneself over to the pulverizing vacuum of a Vitamix type black hole nothingness, but the mush and elixir she alchemizes you into far exceeds any Pluto transit. And to end in the words of one of my favorite songwriters who I recently sang this with in call in response at her concert, which was a lifetime highlight. She's dancing the darkness, she carries the secret light, she's wearing the moonlight, she eats the stars. That is the Galactic Center. She reminds us that we are stardust and helps us towards remembering the stars that we are. And that is just absolutely beautiful, the whole thing. I want to make mention of the thing about yes, it's scary to give oneself over to the pulverizing vacuum of a Vitamix type black hole nothingness, but the mush and elixir she alchemizes you into far exceeds any Pluto transit. I agree so much with that. And I'm somebody who has literally had transit Pluto fucking most of their natal planets their entire life, my entire life, up until a few years ago. Pluto was conjunct, transit Pluto was conjunct almost all of my natal planets, like in succession, like bam, 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 bam. And that motherfucker was rough. Like, my whole life has been rough from that lens. But I agree that the way that the GC does it, and I realize we're talking about transits here, and then we're talking about natal stuff, but I agree. I think the way the GC does it does exceed Pluto in that sense. Speaking as somebody who has, GC conjunctions and has had transit Pluto doing what it's done my whole life. That's not to say that Pluto transits aren't important. They're incredibly important, but I do definitely agree with what Nyx is saying here, for sure. I feel it. I definitely feel it. And the thing about dreams, if you have Neptune conjunct the GC, and I would use I'm using an orb of 10 degrees applying and separating. I do think that's kind of wide, but it's still what I'm rolling with. Like my Neptune is, for instance, is at 6 degrees Capricorn. It would still be an orb here. It's very wide, but it would still be an orb. But like if you're like them, if you're like Nyx and you've got it like dead ass on, or within a couple degrees, you need to be writing down your dreams. For sure. This is probably how downloads come through. This is probably how information comes to you. Even if it doesn't make any fucking sense, be writing it down. I think that is so important for anybody with like Neptune conjunct the GC to do. Now for Nyx, it is, I mentioned that this is in their 4th house. So it is more conscious. It's private, but it's conscious. If you've got, say, Neptune conjunct the GC in the 8th house or in the 12th house, it might be less conscious. It might be, but I would still write your damn dreams down. Write them down, write them out. Again, even if they make no fucking sense, I think there are probably things to take away from it. For sure. Things that you're supposed to take away from it. But yeah. So I'm going to get going, but I will put where you can find me below. And if you would like to have me read something, your own experience with the GC, or if you want to actually share your experience with the GC on camera, let me know. I'd be happy to do either one. And thank you so much, Nyx, for letting me do this, letting me read what you wrote. It's absolutely lovely. And I will see you all later.